program. I have Alevtina Akbulatova online and myself, Ed Knaggs. We're going to give you a run-through of BC Hydro's net metering program, all the ins and outs of the market, how it works, and some selling process. Welcome, Alevtina. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, everybody.
So I'll just jump right into it. First, a little background of HES. For those of you who don't know us, HES is a Canadian-wide distributor and designer of solar systems. So we like to help educate the industry with webinars like this and provide you with proper designs and proper equipment to do the systems. So first, to start things off, a little bit about the current solar market. It's always nice to get an update of where things have come from and where things are going. As you can see, we've seen, for the last 5 years and actually even last 10 years, quite nice growth rates. A growth rate of 44% is actually really, really good for the industry, but also has some implications on the industry. And when Alevtina shows you the actual BC Hydro net metering numbers, there's been just as much significant growth there as well. And sometimes that causes issues as well, trying to keep up. So you see going on into the future, things are going to slow down a bit, but we're still going to have quite a healthy growth rate. And this is actually going to be better for the industry because it lets the industry mature and get to a point where everybody can easily adapt to the growth, add the resources necessary, and accept the change that's happening, which is quite exciting. So now I'm going to pass it off to Alevtina to take you through a bit of the BC Hydro net metering market numbers.
Hello again. Welcome everybody, and I just want to kind of bring it in perspective where we are with BC Hydro comparing to the world market. It is definitely small, but we are very proud to report that as of this month we have close to 500 customers, and that collectively brings just over 2 megawatts of capacity to BC Hydro grid. And with that, again, very proud myself and very passionate about solar, that most of those projects are actually solar PV. And as you could see, they actually contribute about 94% of all the projects. Along with that, under net metering program, we have hydro generating projects, wind and solar combined, and one biogas. Also, it's very interesting to see what happened with the solar PV growth in BC in the last 11 years since the program started. As you could see in those graphs that are clearly showing the significant growth that we have seen in the last couple of years, that from 2012, the number of customers signing up for net metering actually doubled. And again, that is actually a big applaud to the industry, and Home Energy Solution being one of the biggest contributors in British Columbia to this industry in terms of distributing, educating our customers on what solar PV can give them as homeowner or a business owner. And I think, again, we are very happy that with absence of the incentives in this province, we still see a significant growth of the customers that are believing in solar and connecting their unit to the grid. Maybe then now I'll give you a bit more information what the net metering program is.
Alevtina, are you seeing a big change in the system sizes that are being applied for? Like, has that grown in size? I know a few years ago it was around 2 kilowatts. But
yeah, slightly has. If you run the average on the residential customer, I think it has grown slightly, maybe to 4 to 5 on average kilowatts per customer, but on a sort of commercial scale, it stayed within the same average.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. So as I said, I was hoping now to give you a bit of idea of what the program is about, and Eddie, if you would help me along with just bringing each point along. So this program started in 2004. and it's basically based on the BC hydroelectric tariff. So it's not an offering, it's not an incentive program, and I think it's really important for people to understand, especially for customers who are looking for certainty, for consistency of applying the rate, that it's actually part of BC hydroelectric tariff. It's a rate schedule 1289. So at any point you're doubting what are the terms and conditions of this tariff, you can go online to the BC Hydro website and read the tariff. It's very similar to what you are on as a residential customer. You are on rate schedule level 01. So there are no surprises, there are no sudden changes. Any changes to the tariff will have to be approved by British Columbia Utilities Commission, because again, they have the public interest in mind. Who is eligible for the program? Basically, any residential or commercial customers are eligible to participate. All of them are connecting to BC Hydro distribution system. Important to note. Any projects up to 100 kilowatt. Again, there is a very big misconception there that 100 kilowatt is the size of the system. So if we take solar panels, that would be within the range of 400 panels. That's up to that size. You can connect through BC Hydro net metering program. Any clean or renewable energy source are eligible. Again, in my stats, you've seen wind, of course, solar, and a few other ones. Basically, to apply, you can come anytime. Again, because it's a tariff-based, it's not going to be canceled overnight. You can come anytime you're ready. We strongly suggest our customers to apply first before purchasing or installing equipment. That guarantees that once you install a system, that will be acceptable to BC Hydro. It's a simple process. There is no cost to connect most or vast majority of the systems to the grid, and we'll talk a bit more about that in later slides. We require our customers fully displace their load before they will receive a payment, and again, that's only on annual basis. We'll give you more detail later. Any excess electricity that actually is there is paid at a set rate of 9.99 cents per kilowatt hour. This is really interesting for most people, so we'll cover that in details at the later stage of this presentation, where customer offsets their consumption first at the basic rate, and then they are paid for the annual excess at that set rate of 9.99 cents. The technical requirements need to be met. They are publicly available on our website. Any project that is connecting to the grid will have to be meeting those requirements. And the last point on this is that electricity flow is measured by the customer's existing smart meter. So that's kind of a bit of overview. Back to you, Ed.
Thank you very much, Alevtina. You know, a couple things to mention there is, you know, Alevtina mentioned the no cost, and I know we're going to talk about it later as well, but one thing to note is, you know, when she says that there's no incentive in BC, that is actually an incentive in itself, whereas, you know, almost every other distribution company in the rest of Canada actually charges a fee for you to join their net metering program. So BC Hydro having no fee is in itself an incentive. So to move on to the next steps, so, you know, a little program overview, and now looking at actually taking it through, right through a system, through marketing, through lead generation, through qualifying the leads, designing the system, installing it. And we'll walk you through all the different steps of, you know, between HES, the installer, and BC Hydro, and what needs to happen. Of course, the first step is in marketing and lead generation. You need to be able to attract the customers. This is where a lot of people focus a lot of their time and don't usually take the time to plan it out. And it is really important to plan your lead generation so you're getting the right types of leads. Part of that is knowing your audience, knowing who the people are that are buying these systems. You know, and I can tell you, you know, a little bit, and we can also advise you if you ever need. Most of the customers do have the excess incomes. The chip, you know, systems aren't cheap, so you know they have to at least, you know, be willing to put in, you know, $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 for a system, and have that income available. delivering a message. So you have to understand, how you're going to put your marketing materials together and what that message will be, so that it grabs that intended audience and where you're going to deliver it to. A lot of people will do trade shows. Trade shows are good, but you're delivering to a very broad audience. So you have to be able to know how to filter them. Better avenues is if you're doing a solar specific seminar and you're inviting people to it, then they are already interested in solar. So you've sort of filtered that down already. There's mail outs and things like that that you can do as well. And then of course there's the website, which is the most important. And that's where HES can really support you on that is, we have a great marketing team that can help you actually build your website, and the cost would be a lot less from any other designer. So if that's something that you need help with, do reach out to us at least as an option before you go and spend a lot of money for someone that may not know the market as well as we do. So once you've gone and gathered some leads, the next important step is to qualify those leads. And this is oftenly, it's a step that people don't take enough time to do properly, and it's the most important step in the sales process, because what a lot of people will do is they'll get a lead and then they start designing a system for that lead, without qualifying it. And what I mean by that is they haven't actually filtered through with the customer what they're interested in. And I'll go over some ways to quickly do that, but you definitely should not be designing for everyone. You need to narrow it down before you start putting in the time. And this can actually end up saving you a lot of time, which in turn saves you a lot of money, and then would allow you to install systems a lot cheaper. So in qualifying the leads, it's important, first of all, to find out, how that lead came to fruition. Someone phones you up, you can say, well, do you mind telling me how you got our number or where this came from? So you can track which of your marketing efforts is working the best. You do need to be able to respond quickly. If someone emails in a lead, which is the most common these days, they want an email back the next day. And if you can't respond that quickly, you're going to lose them. And a lot of times it's just a response, hey, got your lead, and here's some information, and you have some standard sheets that you're going to send out to them. Or you can put a Q&A on your website that you can direct them to. That also helps your website if you're directing them to that. We do have materials on our website that can help you with that. And our marketing team can help you build that in your website if that's the thing. One thing to do is we always find it better to be upfront with the costs. You're talking about usually a $10,000 system, and you get an idea of how that sits with them. The issues we've seen in the industry is some people say, yes, I'm really interested in doing solar, but in their mind, they're thinking $500. Once you requalify them at 10,000, then they rethink things and, may come back to you later now that they have a realistic view of how it works and what it would cost. Discuss their solar potential. Google Maps now and any GIS program can give you a good view of their roof. And you can actually do quite a bit without having to do a site visit. And that's also recommended as well before you go and visit with them at site. People do like it when you come to site, but if you went and visited every lead, you'd probably go out of business and wouldn't be able to service the ones that are actually going to spend it. Another good one is asking about their timeline. This gives you a good idea of how quick you need to respond. If someone wants it right away, then you can spend more time with them. If someone's just, getting an idea of what they might be able to do a year or 2 years down the road, you can respond, in due time. Frequently asked questions. This is really important for, either your website or to have a little cut sheet that you can email out. And listed here are some of the main questions that do come up. How much space does it take? What will it produce? What are some of the costs? And this webinar can be used as well. We will post it on our site, and you're welcome to send people to it to answer some of the net metering questions. But we also do have an FAQ on our site, and you're welcome to use some of those questions and answers to build your own website. So now that you've actually qualified the leads and you've narrowed it down to people who are interested and understand the budget, you're ready to move on to the system design. But the first part of the system design is actually narrowing down what your design parameters are. And a lot of people also skip this step. We'll look at a roof and they try and fill the roof right away with solar when the person only wants to spend $5,000, which would mean that they're looking at a 3 or 4 panel system. So if they have budget constraints, then you're not usually needed to fill the roof. So depending on that budget, the other one is how much energy they actually want to offset. Then you would apply any restrictions. So if there were no budget limitations, then roof space and the existing electrical system would factor into those designs. And then lastly, you could look at the utility requirements, which we will talk a little bit more about later. So designing for a roof, using a quick estimate is good because you can look at someone's roof. Even from Google now, there's the measuring tool that you can get rough measurements, and you can figure out the square footage of their south-facing roof. We use 10 watts per square foot to figure out how many watts you could fit on that roof space, and that gives you a nice quick estimate. Or you could take the time and actually lay out the modules as you see in the right-hand diagram, see how many would fit, and then give them an exact drawing. Usually you don't want to do that until you've really gone down the road with the customer and you know they're going to go ahead. A lot of people jump into details designs, and sometimes you provide a customer with a shopping list. So you have to be wary of that. Solar potential. So once you know how much solar is going to be able to fit on their roof, we tend to go with the Canadian average for most of BC. It tends to cover most of the spots or the main areas where systems are being installed, and that's 1150 kilowatt hours per kilowatt per year. So that would be your annual energy that you're going to offset. This is a nice number because all the systems that we've seen that go in that are south facing and have a clear view with no shading beat this number by quite a bit. So it's nice to under promise and over deliver. Once you know the estimated output, you do need to account for slight differences. Like I showed in the last slide, that was at a standard 35-degree tilt due south. The interesting thing for grid tie systems is the tilt and the east-west, or the azimuth as we call it, don't have a great effect, as you can see from the two graphs. The upper left is the effect of tilt angle. So you can see 35 degrees is the optimum for our area, but if you drop down to 20 degrees, it's not having a very big impact. It's about a 3% impact, and 20 degrees is about a 412 pitch on a standard roof. So mounting flat to a roof is the better way to go because of the costs associated with tilting. Also, east-west, you can see that, facing due east or due west, you're only dropping to about an 80% output. So to try and tilt again there does not make sense. You would just mount it on the east or west slope, and you're still going to get 80% of the energy. Figuring out your shading, that can be done with a number of different tools. I like to tell people to just take a panoramic of the south slope and then just sort of estimate. And you can see in the picture below, the grid lines are actually the sun's path throughout the year. Of course, the lower lines being in December and the top high line being in June. The top high line is actually where most of your power is harvested. So in this example, this is about an 18% loss for shading from those trees. Not a big impact for what you think you see in the picture. It's quite a bit of, quite a heavy tree line in that side, but because of most of the midday sun is clear, it's still harvesting most of the energy. So lastly, on the design side is don't be afraid to ask us for help. We do have design services that we can offer, and certainly when Alevtina talks about the difference between the simple net metering and the complex, when you do get into a complex system, it's nice to have all the design criteria that they require done properly, and we know that very well and can help you with that. But even in simple systems, we can provide, of course, layouts and single line diagrams and stuff like that, just to help you sell the system to the customer to make it look very professional. So don't be afraid to reach out for us for that. So back to you, Alevtina.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, so it's very timely about simple and complex projects. Basically, all systems, when we receive applications, we divide into two big categories, being simple distributed generators and complex. And here on the screen, I put a exact definition from our technical requirement what the simple systems are. In the simple terms, it would be basically any solar up to 27 kilowatt of capacity would be considered simple. And the process for simple systems is very different there, where the process would be for complex systems, and we'll cover that later. But basically, if the system does not meet what is written on the screen here, that it's above 27, or if it's not inverter-based system, or if your customer has more complicated service, so if it's above 200 amps, or it has transformer metering, then we would require you to provide a complex application, and you will have to go through the complex process. So maybe on the next slide, I showed what are the requirements for the simple systems. And again, the reason we call it simple, because all we want you to do is to submit a one-page application form for the customer. I have not put a picture here, but the information that we are asking is very basic. What's the customer address, account, meter number, how big of a system you're putting, what are the inverters that you're using. Again, what's important is that, and I recently seen a decline in the accuracy of data, that you provide customer account and meter number. It saves a lot of time for my whole team to do that. And again, my team of one quite often struggles with finding the information that you could find from your customers. So if you like this process, continue to be simple and timely, please do your share and fill up application form as much as you can to avoid the delays. So that would be the first step. So when you submit an application to us, again, depending how busy we are here, you will be expecting an email saying that the application is acceptable. And what that would mean to you is that you can now go and install the system, and knowing that once you come back to BC Hydro and say, now can I connect it to the grid? Yes, it's going to be possible because your application in theory was approved. So with that, to get it accepted for connection to the grid, we require you or your electrician to produce an electrical inspection document. Two types of documents are acceptable, either a certificate of electrical inspection that could be issued by the inspector if they choose to come and inspect the project, or your electrician, provided they are an FSR field service representative with the BC Safety Authority, they can issue their form, if I'm not mistaken, 206, which is called Electrical Contractor Authorization and Declaration of Compliance. So either one of those documents is acceptable. If your electrician is using online system, they can PDF either one of those documents and email it to me. That is acceptable. So for complex systems, now we are talking you're maybe dealing with a residential customer who has a 400 amp service, or maybe you're putting it on a school, or maybe you're doing it for business where, again, maybe there is a transformer meter in there. So for this project, we actually look a little bit more into details of the system. And for that, to apply, we require that in addition to the application form, again, note here there is two different forms there. They're very similar, but for complex, we would like you to fill out the complex application form. But more important for complex systems, we would like to see actual drawing. And with that, we require a single line diagram and site plan. And if projects are not inverter-based, we go into protection settings and some other technical details. The process for the complex systems is similar in the beginning, where customers or you on their behalf submit an application. We after being comfortable, accept it, and then that will move you to the installation phase. After the installation is complete, we require again the electrical inspection documents similar to what I mentioned for the simple systems. For some of the systems that are complex, we require for customers to do a field verification test. And what that is that BC Hydro personnel comes to the site and actually checks that whatever you designed in your application, whatever documentation you put together, is actually what you installed in reality, in practicality. There is a fee we charge a $600 plus tax fee to perform a test. I always advise developers to advise me earlier in the game in terms of timing when that test might be needed to be completed, because the crew availability sometimes is not that flexible. Because myself, I can make myself available and shift priorities, but for the field people, it's a bit different. Again, for some projects, we require to sign a few additional documents. And the last point here on the slide is the payment for incremental interconnection costs. So for projects that are complex, for some of them, there are incremental costs that will be payable to BC Hydro. These projects those are above 50 kilowatt in capacity, or using a synchronous generator, or connecting at the primary level potential. Anything above, I believe, 750 volt is considered primary. So for these projects, again, please check with me early in the application process what the estimate for those costs could be. Sometimes we reduce them to zero. Sometimes we do charge them. Again, in my experience, I had a couple projects that had to, where we had to collect those costs, and they were within a couple $1,000s. Important to communicate with me for complex projects to really understand what are the steps, what are the expectations, and really you have an opportunity to reduce those costs by just being clear on your drawings and really meeting our technical requirements. I think with that, I'll go back to Ed.
Thank you very much, Alevtina. So now you've applied, and now you're ready to install, and that's a key message to you is don't do the installation before you've applied, and that has actually happened. Alevtina has told me that she's received some applications, and the person is letting her know that the system is already installed. Now you would be really embarrassed if you were then told that you were not able to connect for some reason. And that can happen. So it's very important to not only apply, but get that email back from Alevtina and her group to make sure that you are okay to proceed with the installation. So once you've done that, you're ready to move on to this stage, which is the installation stage. Of course, your first step is your safety plan and pulling your appropriate permits. Depending on your jurisdiction or your municipality, you'll have, of course, will always need an electrical permit, and then you may or may not require a building permit. And this is something that we're working on as a task throughout BC to try and streamline some of the building permit processes and help alleviate some of the burdens that some municipalities are putting onto installers for building permits. So if you have an issue there, do reach out to us. Well, once your plan's in place and your permits are pulled, you're ready to start the roof work. Then you would move on to the wiring and then the utility interconnection, and I'll walk through those steps a bit. First, a little bit about installing and from the labor side. One of the things that HES does is we do look at what we call the soft costs, and the soft costs associated with PV is anything outside of the hardware, so the modules, the inverters, and the racking, and then beyond that you have your soft costs. We would break that up into different categories, which are mostly the customer acquisition, which I talked about, and if you have an easier time getting customers, there's a savings right there. If customers were just knocking on your door saying, can you install this week, that would be easy and you could install a lot cheaper. So there is a cost associated with that, and it's something worth paying attention to, how much time you're sinking into getting each customers. Permitting, which is what I just discussed, we continue to work on that front. But a big one is the installation labor, and you can see we have quite a high installation labor cost. So there's lots of potential to be saved there, and it's something that you should be keeping track of and monitoring and focusing on to streamline and get your installation labor down. Part of installing is, of course, attaching the racking to the roof. We have lots of options available for you in just about every roof style and type and method. So we're able to help you out no matter what the roof type is, and can help you out also on the engineering side with that, what's needed and what might be needed for the municipality. We continue to improve this process because, of course, the roof attachment method takes time, and we're always looking at trying to streamline the products to make this a lot easier for you. So, you know, try and keep up to date with what's going on our end, because there might be some new gadget or thing that goes on or process to help you do this a lot faster. Once the roof attachments are in place, you can assemble the racking. For us, we use a product called Fast Rack. It's called Fast Rack because that is the purpose of it, is to streamline your installations and make them fast. There's lots of benefits to this, not only with just the speed, but we also look at the code compliance, both on the electrical side and on the mechanical side, to make sure its strength is up to speed for our climate, and that all the electrical functions are done within the racking, and that saves you time and money. Once your racking is on and your modules are on, and you can start doing your wiring. Some simple things to remember, and of course your wiring is going to change depending on what inverter you use. You see in here micro inverters, but if you're using a string inverter, that would change slightly. But things to remember always is you know, you do need an electrical permit. So for those of you who aren't licensed electricians, you do need to hire one for every job and make sure that they've pulled the permit, because you'll need that to send into Alevtina, as she mentioned before. And, you know, for most people under the BC Safety Authority jurisdiction, that's the Form 206 declaration form that can be sent in to cover that end off. 2015 electrical code, we have a new electrical code this year that actually has a new PV section. So make sure you're aware of that. In BC, most jurisdictions aren't going to adopt that until October sometime. When it does come into play, there'll be a whole bunch of new rules that you need to comply to. So if you're concerned about that or doing systems in that time frame, reach out to us and we can help to make sure that you're got all those bases covered. And then the last thing is you know, watch your equipment ratings, especially if you're doing a high voltage DC system, so 600 volts or less system. You have to make sure all the equipment is rated for that. And last.
May I
Sure.
suggest maybe spending just a few moments on the disconnect point, because I get a lot of questions from electricians specifically. Does BC Hydro require a disconnect? Maybe can you provide your view on that?
Absolutely. I mean, this is you know, one of the things that was really nice for BC Hydro to do, because probably I think it's almost 10 years ago now, we required a lockable disconnect out by the meter with a visible break. That now changed, and there's a lot of cost involved with that, because you had to usually run wires out to beside the meter, put the disconnect there, and it was an expensive disconnect, and then run them back in. BC Hydro now has allowed us to just comply with the code, and the electrical code just says that we have to have a lockable disconnect. It's low break rated, and there's a few other criteria there. But now a lot of simple disconnect switches are being allowed. Some safety authorities are even allowing a lockout breaker in the panel to be considered the lockable disconnect. There's air conditioner disconnects out there that are really inexpensive and easy to install, and that's what a lot of people seem to be using for that now.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So the final steps for installing, one thing I did want to make note of is diagrams. You know, even though for the simple program, we no longer need to send these into BC Hydro, which is nice, but you still do have a requirement to post them on site and to post the appropriate labeling. And this is now being, you know, brought to the attention of the safety authorities, so they're starting to look for it and make sure that it's in place, because it is part of the electrical code, so it's under their jurisdiction to make sure these are in place. We do offer this as a service if you need. If you can do your own, that's up to you. But you can get them from us, and the diagram and the labels can all be done in Lamacoid, so they're nice and neat and have the proper durability to be posted on site. Then, of course, once all is said and done, it's getting that inspection form. And I know Alevtina didn't mention it, but I know there's a lot of people who lag in sending that in. You know, they install the system, the customer's happy, they're producing power, but they're not technically supposed to be. So the system shouldn't be turned on until that's been sent in to BC Hydro and they've got the approval back that it's been received and they're ready to generate. So just a little bit on how net metering works, and then I'll hand it back over to Alevtina. So let's just say that you have a 2 kilowatt system on your roof and it's early morning, so the sun's barely coming up and shining on your solar panels. So you're only getting 200 watts out of your solar panels. And there's a little person standing in front of the fridge. The fridge is wide open and it's drawing 700 watts because the motor's running. So if that was the case, your 200 watts coming from solar will help the fridge. So you'll only need to draw 500 watts from the utility, and that will be recorded in your meter. Then if later in the day the person still hasn't decided what to eat, so the fridge is still open and they're still drawing 700 watts, but now the sun is up and the sun is shining brightly on the rays, so they're getting their full 2,000 watts. So now you no longer need to pull energy from the utility, you actually can put energy back and that'll flow through your meter. So it'll be the amount your array is producing less how much you're consuming, so the 2,000 minus the 700 will allow 1,300 watts to flow back onto the grid, and that'll flow through your meter and get recorded. So now I'll pass that off to you, Alevtina.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment, and I hope that doesn't offend you in any way, that we actually don't measure the electricity in watts, we measure it in watt hours, and that's kind of important as I transition into my slides, because anything we talk about is in watt hours, and our meters are in the same way. When you look at the meter, say right now, without having a system, you could come to it and see how much electricity you are drawing from the grid, and it could be, you know, a lot or could be not, depending what it is. But on left-hand side, you could see what channel your meter is on, and 0-1 channel is showing the one how much you're consuming, and 0-1 channel is actually showing how much electricity is being delivered back to the grid. So that's important to understand when we talk about net metering and the metering per se, that customers actually have an ability to come to a meter and stand there and see what's happening. So if they're really concerned that the system is not sending anything to the grid at a super sunny day as we had in the last few weeks, they can actually come to the meter, wait until channel number 2 shows up, which again does not show every cycle. You need probably wait for a minute or so to see it. They can measure what's the reading on that at the beginning, say, of the day, or maybe at the end of the day, and see how much, how many kilowatt hours being delivered to the grid. So with that, maybe to the next slide. When we do the billing, this is the readings that we use. And if you could switch to the next slide, please. So we actually do not use that 9.99 cents all the time, and in fact, very few customers in the net metering portfolio ever been affected by that. But most important is to know what are the customer basic rates. Again, if you're dealing with a residential customer, they would have 2-step rates. Step 1 is limited to around 650 kilowatt hours per month, and everything else is charged at the step 2. As of this April 1st this year, we increased rates to 8 and 12 cents respectively for 2 different steps. And so when the customers are generating electricity, they are setting their consumption or lowering their bill at that more expensive rate first, the 12 cents. And then if they generate a lot, then they go to step 1. Again, that's important when we talk about dollars and cents with the customer. That is what they care about, and quite many of them are actually frustrated about the 9.99 cents, which actually does not increase over time, but their basic rates that are more important in this picture actually do increase as BC Hydro increases the rates over the next few years. So when we talk about billing, which we'll show in the next slide, we talk about inflow and outflow. Inflow is the measure that we talked about, that channel number 1, where we show how much electricity is being delivered from the grid to the customer, and outflow is how much delivered from the customer to the grid. So here on this bill example, we actually do see these readings. So those two circled on the left. So the electric inflow, where just as electric, is actually 1,228 kilowatt hours, and the electric outflow for this customer is 157. So again, when we read the meter at the beginning of billing period and at the end, those are the difference in those channels that we recorded. So this is how your bill is actually calculated, that we charge you for the difference of those two, basically giving you all the credits that you delivered to the grid. Moreover, if you have extra credits that you saved from previous billing periods, we give them to you as well. As you could see, this 10 kilowatt hours from the bottom green section also contributed to that, resulting 1,061 kilowatt hour. So to summarize, when we do net metering billing, you're not only reducing how much inflow you have, meaning how much electricity you draw from BC Hydro grid, because you're already reducing it by the electricity you generate and consume before it reaches the meter. But on top of that, you get the credits that you deliver to the grid, and if you save them over previous billing periods, you also get it in. And on the next slide, I actually show the net outflow bill, where, say, you had a big system and maybe you had a battery backup or whatnot. So within the billing period, you actually didn't draw electricity from BC Hydro grid at all. But moreover, you used most of it, but in excess, you delivered 157 kilowatt hours for the grid. So for this billing period, we only charge you for the basic charges, so there's zero energy charge. And all the credits that we didn't use within this billing period, we save for you for the next months or years to come. What we do on annual basis, we actually pay out any remaining balance on the customer generation account. As for example, for this customer, if this was the anniversary date within this month, we would pay them out 167 kilowatt hours multiplied by 9.99 cents per kilowatt hour and put that as a dollar credit on the account, and then zero this balancing account and start over again. So again, what net metering does, it reduces your bill on monthly basis, on regular basis, and if you are overproducing consistently, we pay it out once a year. Briefly, I wanted to show you what customers could do in terms of seeing what is happening with the meter. So we have any customer of BC Hydro can register for online My Hydro account, where they actually could see the net consumption. So the net consumption could be viewed on a daily basis, similar to what's shown on the screen right now, or it could be, you could choose an option to see it on an hourly basis. So for net metering customers within, say, that hour, they might have an ability to see that negative number that everybody is looking for. So say on a sunny day, you generate electricity, you're not using anything. So within that hour, you might drop down below zero. Important disclaimer here that this system is built for estimate only. When we do the billing, we actually validate the data that meter produces, and that always takes precedence. So this is only given for our customers for sort of representation purposes only, just kind of understanding what is going on, and it cannot be relied for the billing. So with that, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. That our website, which is bchydro.com/netmetering, has a few resources that you might use when you think or your customers think about net metering. We sometimes write stories on our customers, what difference they made, how their solar system changed in their life. We have one pager on the billing, which similar to what I explained right now. Again, you can download that. Just for the interest of time, maybe to the next slide. Looking to the future, we are looking into doing more systems that could be actually leased by the customer instead of owned. A quick note here is that BC Hydro tariff requires that all the systems that customers connect are owned by the customer. So actually, this month we have received BCUC decision, British Columbia Utilities Commission decision, that now the customers can lease systems from a third party and connect through net metering program. That application was very quick and got accepted by the Commission without any formal process, and very, very pleased with that outcome. Now we're really waiting for the industry and business community to come up with a framework that could provide that service to our customers, that they can lease a system and connect to BC Hydro Grid. In terms of communication efforts, we like to do more webinars like this one. I want to make sure I mention that we can do a webinar for your community. I've done a couple of them recently, where community from an island came to me and says, we have a dozen of people who want to come and learn about that. Can you do it for us? And I said, of course, yes, we can do that. Let's set it up. And we did a webinar like that. So please feel free to approach me with anything that you have, and I will give it a very thorough consideration. I have participated in a few community events on Vancouver Island, sort of similar to a trade show that Ed mentioned. Felt that was a really good sort of time spent with potential customers and supporting you as an installer being there at such events. Again, please feel free to let me know, and I'll consider coming up. And again, if anything we can do working together, always welcome your contact. That's it for me, Ed.
Thank you very much, Alevtina. So if there's any questions, I mean, you can email myself or Alevtina, or give either of us a call. We're happy to help. I mean, part of this is growing industry. I know some of you compete against each other, so there is a side where you have to put your competition aside and work together to grow the industry, which is what we try and do, and take down barriers and make it easier for everybody, and that grows things in turn. So if there are any questions, if you want to type them in very quickly, and if not, we thank you very much. As Alevtina mentioned, there are resources both on BC Hydro's website and on ours as well. Also, if we do have stuff that isn't posted on the website that we can also email you, some that explains net metering in general. We also have a lot of code documents and electrical stuff that we can send you as well, and how to do things. So Cameron's going to jump in here with a few questions, and then we'll do our best to answer them.
First question is any word if and when Fortis comes aboard with net metering?
Fortis BC currently has a net metering program. It's slightly different from BC Hydro's, but it does look like they're slowly adopting similar methods and stuff. So if you want to email us in, we can send you information on Fortis's program.
Okay, next question. What is the year-end date for customer payout from BC Hydro?
So when customers receive an email from us saying that customer is approved to connect to the grid and start generating electricity, that is considered the customer's in-service date. So it's good to take a note of that date. So every year around that date, we will do the annual reconciliation on the customer's account.
Okay, and I think we're getting a couple more. Hold on one second, please.
So Alevtina, it's my understanding on the reconciliation. Do you still reserve that, like say it was a small amount that you would carry that forward into the next year, or is it always paid out no matter what?
It's actually opposite. As a default scenario, any amount gets deposited on the customer account. So say you receive the bill and that falls within your anniversary date, you could see that dollar credit on the account, and the customer actually has to call in to the BC Hydro customer service and request a check. The rule of thumb is a 6-month kind of billing period. If the dollar credit is kind of covers for 6 months of future bills, we sort of we prefer not to pay it out, but anything above that could be paid out. But I know that if you call in and request a check, once you see the dollar credit is there, you can get one.
Thank you.
There's a bunch of questions here that we may answer personally, and I think that's probably for the best because they do get quite personal in some of the questions. So thank you everybody for your questions and for attending today. Thank you very much, Alevtina, for joining us today and your excellent presentation. That was very informative for everybody in the community. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you, Ed, as well.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, take care.